and Caitlin really put together through the spreadsheets, have it all factored in that as people come out of quarantine or they're no longer considered to be in isolation, then those numbers will drop off and then potentially new numbers will come in. So, yep.
Thank you.
And then the other piece that does confuse some people, or they maybe wonder why, by law, if it's 0 cases in a building, we can put 0. If it's 6 or more, we can list the exact number. So we can say 6 or 8 or 9 cases. If it's between 1 and 5, we have to say fewer than 6. So that's just by law the requirement we have to do. That's to allow for privacy for individuals so somebody can't figure out, oh, I can track down if it was 2 people, I can try to figure out who that is in the building. So, so that's why you'll see certain numbers will say fewer than 6 in categories. That's just what we have to put down for that. So.
Shannon, would you mind mentioning something about the community build project that you talked about just a little bit? I was kind of excited about that. Would you share with everyone what that is?
Yeah, the community build project is something that MEDCO and the City of Marion and Marion Independent School District and Linn-Mar have been working on for quite a while. And mostly it's been MEDCO's really taken the lead on that project. It's been a really neat kind of a solution to a problem they were trying to figure out. For years, Linn-Mar and Marion have partnered, have had sharing of students back and forth between a class where they build a new house, and then a couple of years ago decided not to do that anymore. So then the modification of that became trying to figure out ways to do kind of a fixer-upper. So MEDCO reached out to the city and worked on some funds and essentially have it set up that we're now offering a course that Marion Independent School teacher is teaching, but Linn-Mar students can participate in as well. I think the class is about 50-50 as far as the numbers right now. And they're not building a house this year, but they are renovating a house. So it's right on 8th Avenue. They have a big sign up right now to show the house, to identify it. And the students got started right away. I think they bought the house maybe the day of derecho or the day before derecho. So obviously went from a fixer-upper to a real fixer-upper. They weren't planning to do any outside work except for some basic things. After derecho, that's all they've been doing so far is getting the outside work done first. And then they will do essentially a rebuild of the house and then look to resell it. And then whatever profit they make, that will go back towards a future house for future classes to use too. So kind of a neat project, neat opportunity for kids to participate in. They had kind of a kickoff on Friday. I was able to go visit, and just by luck of the draw, one of our Linn-Mar students had heard that there's an opportunity to maybe do an internship with MEDCO to do more of the social media coverage of it and blog about the process and share the updates. So that student, I was able to connect with MEDCO folks, and they're applying to be the intern there as well. So they're viewing it more than just construction. They're also eventually hope to do students have interest in real estate or marketing, that they can connect some opportunities there for them as well. So pretty neat project, a really great partnership between, as I mentioned, the city, MEDCO, Marion Independent, and ourselves. So.
Thank you for doing that. I just thought it was so interesting.
Yeah.
Next, we have a discussion about the early separation.
Yeah, early separation, as board members know, per board policy 401.10, the board has the option to offer early separation package for certified teachers. In recent years, we've offered this plan essentially every other year, and this year would be that year if we continued to do that. This year is a very different year, as everybody knows, as well, so I want to kind of introduce a couple things, open up a conversation with board members about, and then have an agenda item on here later on in the meeting as well, to vote upon as well. But a couple of things I think I want board members to really be aware of this year. There's several issues with offering early separation this year from a financial perspective and then also a staffing perspective. First of all, you heard JT financial update a little bit ago. Wrapped up a successful fiscal year this past year. This upcoming year, we have some concerns with 2 new schools, and I can't remember how many staff we ended up hiring. In addition, 50-some staff members that we had not had in our budget as well in the past. And we know that will have a general budget impact of our fiscal year budget for next year. Also, a lot of unknowns at the legislative level right now. Will there be across-the-board cuts? What will SSA look like? Just all kinds of potential things there that have us not the normal things we're dealing with necessarily. The management fund update, JT gave an update where we are there. I think Kara asked the question about management fund overall, the health of that, and will insurance impact our future management fund resources? We do think it will. We don't know how much that's going to be yet, but we do think we'll see an increase in our insurance, which does come out of our management fund status as well, so we want to be careful of that case. And then if you start to combine all of our levies that we have, we really want to be careful to be respectful to our taxpayers, that as we stack levy rates up, that we don't get ourselves in a position that we are at a levy rate that we're not comfortable with. We've been careful with that with the bond issue a couple years ago, and we made a commitment that we would start to keep that levy rate consistent or potentially decrease it in upcoming years too. So we want to honor that as well, because any increase we would do in a management fund would also have to either be adjusted by lowering other levy rates or increasing our overall levy rate, essentially. So I want to be thoughtful on that. And then from a human resources perspective, we've talked the last several years on and off that we are concerned about a teacher shortage. Less and less students coming out of teacher prep programs, just starting to become concerned about the number of candidates we have, and we're very blessed to have a strong candidate pool, and we want to keep it that way. Without that strong candidate pool, our jobs get incredibly more difficult to educate our kids the level we want. So, multiple things there cause me concern about where we're at. And the bottom line for me is essentially there's just a lot of unknowns this year, which is not a surprise to anybody with all we've been going through. So I have real reservation about being able to offer it this year for financial reasons and for our human resources concern for staffing as well. So I would not recommend that we offer a retirement package or separation package this year. Not an ideal situation. We always want to try to do what's best for our staff and for us as a district, but this is one that I think, to err on the side of caution and be fiscally responsible, I would feel reckless to advise otherwise for you. But with that, I'd like to open up the conversation, questions you may have for me or for JT as well.
Anyone?
The only thing I would say is maybe next year it's an off year, but maybe we at least look at it to see. I don't know if things are going to change, based on financial, but it might be nice to at least look at it to see.
Yeah, we're not obligated to offer it every other year.
Right.
So if we decide we want to revisit this again next year, when it's an off year per se, that could certainly be looked at again as well. Yeah, we don't know what that's going to look like any more than we do right now, but could certainly be revisited again.
I think it makes sense to wait. I mean, it's too much unknown financially, and we're already in a spot, so I don't see any issue with waiting.
Anyone else? You good?
No, just the thing that, when we vote, I think it's important to communicate exactly what the issue that Tim just came up with, so that staff aren't looking at, well, now it's going to be even longer before we get this again, which it's up to us. We can implement that. So I think that would be nice to communicate that would be on look at this issue next year also.
Yeah, and that's the other reason about bringing it up now, I think, versus later, is even though we're just starting the school year, giving people plenty of notice as far as they make their plans for their own personal situations, that they would know where we stand for that right now too, so there's not any surprises for them that we wouldn't want to do.
Okay. All right. I think we're good. We'll move on to unfinished business. Okay, that's where we're at. And we have the second reading of policy recommendations.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of the policy recommendations as presented.
Second?
Okay, Kara and Barry. All right, discussion.
I'll start off real quickly. In the packet, you'll see two things that are clarified a little bit. One is the recommendation from, I think it was Britt from last meeting, just the language on if we have to make changes, superintendent roles, board communication, that piece that matches up to our announcement we made back in the springtime as well, so that is consistent with that.
Thank you for going back and finding that.
What was that?
Thank you for going back and finding that wording that
Yeah.
Tim added in then, and so just thank you for the extra time. I appreciate that.
Well, it's good to be consistent with our language on that as well, I think, too. So, and then the other one is 902.12, R, I guess it would be. The language there is to try to match up the original conversation we had was along the lines of masks to be recommended, but then it also stated in there as well that could go beyond that, but with our current practice of required, I think it'd be just clear, more consistent, less open to interpretation of different things as well, just make it required. So that'd be the other change you would see there. If we need to make that adjustment in future times, then we'd have to come back to the board table for that conversation, but I don't see that being a problem. So
Makes sense.
otherwise, the other policies are exactly the same as we discussed last time.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. All right, let's see, discussion here, metrics, determining transitions between learning models.
Yeah, at your table, you should have a copy of the draft metrics for us to consider and discuss. This is very, very similar to the same draft you saw last time. 2 changes I made based on our last conversation. In the top right-hand corner, we added a clarifier for staff, so it wasn't just teachers, but if we are concerned about staff absences, it could be teachers, bus drivers, you name it, across the board, because that'd be a factor we have to consider to make sure we can still safely operate our buildings and get kids to and from school. So that was added. And then the only other thing that was added right in the middle, beneath the percent positivity for Linn County, you'll see the link, and that is the site I believe I've shared with you as well that we use to help get that number as far as where we are as a county over the last 14 days. So that's just a reference to make sure everybody's consistent in the information you look at, because as we all know, there's a lot of different metrics available for us on that. So that would just be the clarifier. Other than that, the one thing I will, just a quick reminder, for this draft document, the only thing that is set by Iowa code in here is the 15% and 10% student absenteeism to go online learning for all. So the far yellow tab, the other 3 tabs, I put numbers there that were there by the state, but those are a little more flexible in how we would choose to adjust those if we choose to do so. So that's, nothing's been changed since last time on those numbers, but just want to give you a reminder of which ones we can mess around with and which ones are set for us. So,
I move to approve the metrics as discussed for transitioning between learning models due to COVID.
Second.
I would like to discuss the numbers before we decide what we're approving. That was kind of the agreement last time. We would discuss again once.
So what would you like to say?
Well, last time we talked about the 15% or more barrier for hybrid for all, and is that the right number? Just to summarize, since Kara and Tim weren't here last time, I mentioned that the national recommendations from the CDC and from the White House Task Force and the American Academy of Pediatrics is 10% for in-person. And so my request was to consider, instead of waiting until we hit 15%, to consider moving the elementary and the intermediate to hybrid, that percentage be lower, somewhere closer to 10 or 12%. And since that is something that we can determine, that was my suggestion, was that waiting until 15%, where the elementaries and the intermediates, it's full in person. We are social distancing as best we can, but it's not perfect, that perhaps that should be a lower percentage. That was the discussion that I would like to have before we move, determine what our numbers are going to be.
And I wasn't here last time, but I talked to Shannon beforehand. I think the 14% is too high of a bar for elementary. I mean, you're going to have 20 some kids in the room, and I mean, I'd like to see it, lower 12, 10%, somewhere around there. So what I'm understanding is we're at 8 now.
This was
Oh,
8 the
okay.
original time it was printed off. I looked this morning.
We're probably
I think
still
it's
around that age.
6.8 or 7, somewhere in that area. I can't remember off the top of my head, but.
So I guess I'd like to see it. I guess I don't really understand why elementary can go up to 14%. You know, I mean, you're still, I mean, the kids are not 6 feet apart in a classroom for the most part, I wouldn't think.
They're not 3 feet apart.
So, I mean, I think I'd like to see a lower number too.
Anyone else?
For me, in-person learning at that lower level was always about equity. It was always about the society of our structure that we live in. And so that is kind of still where I'm at on that. So I appreciate, like, I mean, I felt like Sandra was looking at me to say something, so I appreciate where you're coming from.
But, you know, to argue, I would
Pressure
say
of the look.
it's equitable to be safe in an environment. And if you're not safe, why are we putting kids in a 14% COVID environment? Because then they're going to get COVID. I mean, whether it impacts them or not, but, I mean, whether they get symptoms or not, it's a different story. But
Well, and if we start seeing percentages go up and we are proactive in switching to a hybrid, then I think it saves some students from ending up in quarantine completely for weeks at a time, or losing their teacher for weeks at a time because the teacher has to quarantine or self-isolate. So I actually think that if we have a lower percentage for that transition to that model for hybrid, we're actually going to, if we get to that point, we're going to keep kids in the classroom longer and more efficiently, because at least they'd be there every other day. It wouldn't impact the entire group of students. So, and it's one factor that we would have to consider. It's not the only factor. So I think that 15% is too high.
And that's one thing I would jump in with as well is, again, a reminder that we're not looking at these numbers as hard, fast, have to be numbers regardless of where we set at, because we do have to lose other factors mentioned in the top right corner from staff absences, student numbers in the building as well, guidance from Linn County Public Health, those things we've talked about too. So this would be a guide for us. It would not necessarily be a lock number. It has to be exactly at that point. And then to Tim, your question about the Y elementary intermediate versus the secondary for the hybrid, it comes down to a couple things. The primary piece is at the 7-12 level, our teachers are teaching that dual platform world where online and in person, so students are getting that direct instruction every day. In the elementary hybrid level, that's just really not a realistic model, so students would not be. So I think it goes to Kara's equity piece of that. So that's the rationale behind it. But again, it's open for interpretation of what would be the best approach as well. So.
And I don't think we're going to get student absences of 15%. I mean, I certainly hope not. I don't think we are. I don't see the Linn County Public Health changing any guidance. I mean they've done a pretty good job, I think, overall. Better than some, worse than others, maybe. I don't know. But staff absences is kind of where I do think that could be a big impact. I think we're starting to see that some already. So
yeah, we've been saying since midsummer as a cabinet group that our biggest concern as far as being able to stay in school this year is, do we have enough staff to run the buildings and provide transportation and make meals? And I think that could be our biggest concern, even more than the numbers, as far as which model we need to operate in.
I guess I would say, at least move it down to 12. That would be kind of my recommendation. I'd like to get 10, but I can live with 12.
I can live with 12 as well. Mark, what do you think?
So you're saying 0 to 5% and then 6 to
6 to
12?
6 to 12.
I don't mind the 12%. I just want to communicate it to the patrons of the district that we still have, like you said, Shannon, we have the flexibility to interpret this, because I just don't want everybody to think, well, it's not going to happen until it gets 12%. It's not going to happen till it gets 5%. And, it's just one of those things you don't want the patrons of the district, you want them to have a clear vision as to what we're trying to do versus something that's out there that gets misconstrued and then everybody starts hearing about it. if that makes sense.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
if we change it to 12%, I think we need to put that codicil in there with a communicative explanation, and I think it'd be okay.
It's
I think
one of several factors that would be considered.
Yeah.
Barry?
Well, I think the codicil is already in there, Clark, and I appreciate that comment, but I personally would stay with the 15. I would stay exactly where it's at. And just to echo what Kara said, talking about the social economic piece of it, the families working, getting the kids back in school. I know there are so many factors there. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know that percentage. But to a point, that percentage is actually leveling off. We are testing more people, of course, but I still feel that we need to do everything in our power to keep things moving forward, both for the teachers and for the students, and that's why I advocate for the 15% where it's at, so.
What's the, we say positivity of a 14-day period, but how long of a 14-day? If we hit 5% once, do we go to all in person? I mean, because how long are we talking in the 5% period? I
Yeah.
honestly don't know the answer on this.
No, and that's one I think is a really good point too, because that number could dip down
Yeah,
to
it could dip down,
5,
go right
and
back
then
up.
or it could dip or increase to 15%, and then we can't be making a change one day, and then the very next day we're making that change back again.
And that's still up for review for the first 9 weeks were pretty well set anyway.
For the secondary level.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct,
So-
so.
Yeah, but we haven't had all elementary kids in the classroom.
Today was day one.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Yeah, as far as the length of time in there, that's something we need to discuss as well. Does that need to be the last time we talked, if I remember correctly, somewhere in that 3 to 5 day window of some continuity to see? That'd be one of those conversations with Linn County Public Health, as well as what are they projecting those numbers? Are they going to dip down to 5 and continue down there for a while, do they think? Or is that going to just be a one-day dip to help make that decision too? And that's why I think it can't be a rigid numbers automatically making that decision. And I do see us reviewing this essentially every board meeting, just as here's where we're at right now, and if there's conversations we need to have about next steps to consider. The other piece of this that we need to make sure, regardless of what numbers the board decides you're comfortable with, we have to make sure to give people adequate time to plan anytime we make a transition from one model to the other. Now, there may be some emergency times we can't, but I think in general, we need to figure out adequate time to notify people if we do need to make a change, so they can plan for daycare, plan for schedules, and just communicate everything out to everybody throughout this year too. So that'd be the other thing I want to make sure we build that lag time in as well.
That's important.
Clark, I'm just trying to be clear, where did you land? Like 12% with clarity, or staying at 15?
We have a motion on the table that has to be voted on first.
Okay, so.
No, I mean, there's still discussion, right? I mean,
That's correct.
We're still in
Yeah.
discussion. So I'm voting no if it's 15. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to see it 12. And we're saying 12, that would be 6 to 12 or 6 to 11, is it?
I guess it would be 6 to 11, then 12
to 11.
to
12% is
15.
what you're.
12 or 15.
I guess I would go along with the 12%.
I would vote no.
Not for the motion as presented.
Yeah.
Like you would vote yes for the
Currently have a
as
motion
presented.
for 15%, so that would be
So if
the first vote we need to take.
the motion doesn't pass, because the motion is for this as presented.
Yes.
Correct.
So if the motion doesn't pass, then it goes back to draft,
Correct.
and then we would have it at our next meeting, just for the clarity. for the
Could you
table.
just amend it?
Say, couldn't we just amend it?
Could be
Is that
amended
what you
vote.
want?
Whoever made the motion.
Amended motion. But we have to vote on this
I don't-
first.
We
like,
need
I
to
don't
take-
know
we
that I
need to
feel
take a
like I
vote
have
on the
enough
motion first.
Information to vote yes on an amended motion. Like, I don't know, for me, I would need to look at like the historical, like how many days in the last 6 weeks have we been at that threshold that would move everybody to hybrid learning? How many days was that sustained? So my concern is about parents that have to work. Parents that have to go to work, and the lack of childcare that we have in our community already, COVID aside. And if that, like, it is what it is, and we didn't build this American society that we're living in now as board members, and I have to support those parents that have to go to work, that don't have a choice, and they don't have elsewhere to do with their kids if we were to move those younger grades into hybrid learning. I think another question I would have if we were to vote on a lower number is what steps would we be taking to move back to, like, from this purple color to green as precipitously as we can? There's just, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on an amended motion to pass it here.
Okay.
So I think what we need to do is first vote on whether we pass or not on the original motion, which is to, as presented here with 15%, 6 to 14 and 15%. Am I correct? So let's begin with all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, it does not pass. So at this point, we need to bring it back with the revision as stated with, then you're comfortable with, you want it to be like, say, 6 to 12%?
This is 6 to 11 and then 12%.
6 to 11,
12 to
and then
15.
the other one 12 to,
I think we were
15?
flexible on that. We liked 10 to 12. So we're flexible in seeing what comes back as the next recommendation and looking at what Kara has asked for and looking at those long-term.
And I can look up the historical data on my own. Like,
Okay.
I can do that. I don't
I
need.
actually have it charted so I can share that
Perfect.
with everybody, so.
that would
And
be
then
great.
kind of like what steps we can take to either support the families while we're in this model. Because we also, like, hybrid learning for all, like, what does that look like for the kids that are in the buildings for before and after school? Like, there's a lot to consider in making this move, so.
Well, yeah, because I wasn't thinking in those terms, but that might cause me to change things once we know that too, if that makes sense.
Sure, the more information you have, that may change
Yeah.
the situation too.
So we will come back to
Thank you.
this.
Thank you.
So let me make sure, we also had some, I think I've got that numbers correctly in historical data, the daycare info, but then we've also had some brief conversations about how many days would we need to have in a row to really seriously consider that. That's a topic I'd like to go back and address as well when we have that next conversation. And then notice time for families so they can plan too. So 2 other things for you to think about before we come back next meeting to continue that conversation. I think it's good to take our time and spend some discussion on this to make sure we have a spot we're comfortable with, because in all reality, is what we're going to be dealing with throughout the entire year. So time spent now to get it where we want to be and everybody's comfortable is important, I think, so.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Let's go on to new business. Approval of fundraisers.
I make a motion to approve the fundraisers as presented.
Second?
Kara and Clark. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
I make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 certified annual report as presented.
Second?
Okay. Kara and Barry. Any other discussion? Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay.
I make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 depository banks affidavit reports as presented.
Second?
I'll say Kara and Clark. Okay, any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, allowable growth.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 SBRC allowable growth request for the special education deficit in the amount of $3,731,135.20.
Second.
Okay, Kara and Britt. Need other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2020 SBRC allowable growth request for limited English proficiency deficit in the amount of $345,872.11.
Second.
Okay, Carrie and Kara. discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Excuse me, I can't seem to turn the page here. All right, on the next one with the early separation, it was the recommendation by Mr. Bisgard is to deny the offering of early separation. So whoever makes the motion, you need to choose rather you say approve or deny.
I move to deny the offering of early separation to eligible certified staff members per policy 401.10, licensed personnel early separation.
Second.
Second, Barry and Kara. Any other discussion? I think Shannon did a great job of describing to us. Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So it carries. Open enrollment.
Make a
I
motion.
move to approve the open enrollment request as presented.
Clark, Britt. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, Britt, Kara. Okay, any discussion? JT, you mentioned a little bit about the Oak Ridge track. Can you give us a little bit, is LL Pelling doing the paving of that? Is that where
Yeah.
we're at?
Yep, they're the general contractor for that project. When we approved the bid way back, I think it was February, there was an alternate bid for the cement stabilization, obviously for wet soils. And we didn't approve that at that time because we wanted to see what the scenario was. I think we all knew at that time that more than likely this was going to come down the pipeline. It has, so that's where we're at on the consent agenda for the approval of the cement stabilization, the alternate bid basically for that.
Okay.
Now, is that just an asphalt surface? Is it going to be a base and then a regular track surface?
Yep, asphalt base and then with the regular track surface.
Okay.
Yep, it'll be very, very similar to what's out at Excelsior right now.
And it'll be ready by spring, right? Is that the plan?
Hopefully it'll be ready by the end of next month. Not
Oh,
that we'll
nice.
have any competition or anything like that. Yes.
But also it can
It'll
be
be
used
off the
by,
to-do list. You
Yep.
won't have to do it anymore.
but it can be used by anyone.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep, absolutely.
because it's a joint
Yep.
effort with
Yep.
the
Yep.
city. So,
Yep.
that's awesome. Well,
that we
I
paid
thought
for.
that might be where we were. I just wanted to clarify. Is there any other discussions, questions?
Just regards to the student teaching agreement, when we first had said that we were still going to have student teachers in the buildings during COVID, I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, but now that school has gotten underway, I think that we're probably, at least from what my kids have been sharing with me about the student teachers that they've, had interactions with, that we're very grateful to have those additional, people learning to be teachers in our building, so.
Yep. Yeah, they're not just learning to be teachers, they're very
Well,
helpful.
right,
No,
sorry.
no, I didn't mean it that way at all, but they're very helpful for us as well.
Yeah.
Oh, heavens,
When they're in the
yes.
schools too,
Yeah.
so.
It's been great, so.
Absolutely. Okay, anything else?
And we need more teachers,
All
period.
right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Here over to board communications. Anyone have something they'd like to share? Okay, on to the calendar. I do see that we have a board visit, 11:30 a.m., October 8th at Lynn Grove. And this is just to pretty much go in, walk around business. Is that what you're
Yep,
thinking?
we're going to simplify the board visits this year for COVID reasons, but also just think the opportunity for board members to see the buildings in action in the new world that we're in as well. So there'll be tours. Usually you have students kind of do the tours a lot of times. In this case, they probably will not be. There'll be more staff-driven tours, but still give you a chance to see the buildings in action and get to see all aspects of the day. Since we'll be there over lunchtime, you'll get to see a lot of different happenings, so,
Okay. That's on a Thursday.
yep.
There's also a Marion City Council meeting that night. Would anyone like to be responsible for getting information for that? Anybody?
I can take it.
Okay.
Thank you,
wanna do
Barry.
that? Thank you. And then there's also another one, October 22nd. I can do that one. All right, so we've got those covered in October. CTE meeting, that would be Barry, myself, and Britt.
Yes.
Okay, that's coming up October 14th. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up at this time?
So you'll just let us know in 2 weeks if we meet here or meet at the school.
For,
On the 12th for
On-
the
For the
tour
workshop.
For
of
the
Boulder Peak
tours?
and-
oh, I'm sorry, for the work session?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll, it'll be in this week's memo, but we're actually gonna meet at Hazel Point first. And then we'll do about 40 minutes there, and then we'll go to Boulder Peak after that. And then we'll come back here before the regular meeting, so, yep.
All right, sounds good.
That's great.
Yeah, it'll be excited to show them off a little bit.
Okay, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
Well, motion to adjourn the regular meeting at 8:25 PM.
Second.
Okay, all those